Okay, Mr. Richard Steele, thank you very much for returning onto theboxingbar.com and welcome, my friend.
Thank you.
And Richard, first of all, congratulations on this announcement that you will be in the 2014 class of the International Boxing Hall of Fame. What were your immediate thoughts when you got this news?
Well, I was just very happy to receive the phone call. I try to not even think about it, for the last several years, but I felt like it was getting close. And so when I did receive the phone call, I was very happy and excited.
And I remember talking to one of your close friends, your good friends, Jeff Zimmerman, about 2 years ago when we did the last interview. And, we were talking about justice, that you deserve something like this. If someone were to ask you, why do you think you deserve this honor, what would you answer?
Well, I think I paid my dues as far as working many world title fights. I think I'm about number 2. If not number 1, I'm number 2 in working in as many world title fights that I have done. I think Joe Cortez not beat me out. I used to be the number 1. I think Joe just went ahead of me before he retired. So I think by the number of fights that I have refereed and the quality of fights that I referee, I think for being in the referee business for over 30 years, I think that I deserved it.
And who of all the people that helped you out, who would you thank or commend? What people would you thank for helping you get there to that level, to get where you got and to actually get this award?
Well, there's a lot of people I could really thank, for getting me the assignments or giving me the right assignment. Mark Ratner is definitely one that I definitely would thank. Sig Rogich, that was the commissioner when I first got here, I definitely have to thank because he's the one that helped me to move from Los Angeles to Vegas. Jose Suleiman, WBC, definitely is one that I have to thank for giving me so many chances to do WBC's world title fight. Dr. Nave, another commissioner, my old friend Chuck Minker, definitely I would have to thank him because he's the one that helped me to move to Las Vegas. And I'm probably forgetting a couple more, but those are the main ones.
And Mark Ratner has always said you've been one of the most honest people he's ever known. He's always said you've been one of the most honest people that he personally ever knew. And when all those bad controversies or whatever happened in the past, whether it been with the Melder Taylor and Chavez fight or any Mike Tyson fights or whatever, he was always to back you. And what do you think of him? And how gracious are you towards him as an individual?
Well, like I said, I definitely he would be one of the top figures that I would definitely have to give thanks to. Mark was the best executive directors that I ever worked under or worked for. Not only did he know the game of boxing, but, he really took his time out to really learn the players and learn the guys that he was in charge with. And he was always fair with me. And he always had a reason why. And he would tell you straight up, why he didn't give you this fight or why he did give you that fight. And that's, really make a guy work hard. And I definitely have to thank Mark Ratner because, as you say, he not only is he really knowing about boxing, but he's a true, honest person himself.
When you got this notice, and I'm sure a lot of things came to your mind from how you got started into the sport in the first place. And I remember in our first interview, you brought up Jackie McCoy and how he got you into boxing. And, your dad, was into boxing also. And, he was in the service. Did a lot of that stuff come to mind, from how your upbringing was? And, a lot of people, when they win a world title, they say, I had these flashbacks when they were handing me the title. Did some of those flashbacks come to you when you got this announcement that you were going to get this 2014 induction into the Hall of Fame?
Well, definitely it does, because I'll never forget. But Jackie is the one that told me to take the referee assignment. And I was trying to hold on and trying to continue to my boxing career. And I had just lost a really tough fight. And he just said, hey, they're giving you a chance to be a referee, and I definitely believe that you should take it. And Jackie, I always listen to Jackie, and I definitely follow his directions. So he's the one that really got me interested in refereeing, and it worked out better than he or I even thought about. I know before he passed, I talked to Jackie, and that's the exact words that he said. He said, man, this referee position worked out better than we thought.
And Jackie worked with one of my favorite boxers of all time, Mando Ramos, who was just an exciting, great fighter, and I know you remember him from the Olympic era.
Oh, yeah. With Mando and I, Mando Ramos, Raul Rojas, we was all under Jackie. He trained all of us, and Mando was a great fighter, and he was so young when he fought and won the title, But under Jackie McCoy, Jackie took him the right direction and got him the title fight at the right time, and he won the title. And, yeah, Jackie was a great manager, great person, and he really knew boxing.
And we can't talk about your life or your successes without talking about someone like Jackie McCoy, who did a lot for you also. In our first interview that we had, we went down the rundown of your career and your life growing up and how you got into boxing, and you were a very good light heavyweight fighter yourself. Did a lot of that help you out in the making of who Richard Steele really is, from, your upbringing to you becoming a boxer to you becoming a referee? And I remember you telling me about one of the first times that you ever refereed was in Bakersfield and one of the smokers. And, did a lot of that add to who you are and the makeup of who you would become later on?
Yes, it did. Because when I started fighting, as you said, they sent me around to small towns, and they always had their favorites. But you had to call the fight the way you saw it, or you had to do your job. And even though it might not be popular to the fans where you at, you still had a job to do, and that really made me a good referee, because I wasn't afraid to call it the way I saw it. Make no difference if it's against the hometown favorite or not. I believe that, doing the right thing is what really got me to where I'm at, because I had no favorites of any fighter. I just called it the way it should have been called,
And that very much answers my question, because you did do just that. I think you were very much an honest person, and you did what you had to do. And even against the people that would think it'd be a controversy, you stood your ground, and you did stand by what you believe in and stand by your word. And I think that's exactly why you're getting this award next year.
Well, I tell you, when I got the phone call, that was one of the things that went through my mind. Went through my mind that it pays off to do the right thing, no matter what you got to go through. We went through some tough times. A couple of fights that I had, with the Melzer Teller fight. Even though that a lot of people don't know that the medical board came back and really, made my job much better, much easier for me to continue to do it the same way. Because when the medical board came back with Melzer Teller, saying that, the kid was really beat up and he took a beating. And,
it legitimized what you had done and your decision.
Correct. Yeah, and so that is something that I always, you know, always think about, and I'll always tell other young referees, if you do it the right way, it will always work out best for you and your career.
And the first time we talked, we brought up a lot of the fights that you've done in the past, like that one, and that was what most people liked about our interview is how I brought up all these fights and you answered all these fights, and I hope to do that again with a few more fights today. But
Yes.
what fights do you think defined you, or what fights are the ones that people bring up to you whenever they see you or whenever they want to talk boxing with you? What are the fights that you think define you?
Well, definitely the Sugar Ray Leonard fights. You know, Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard with Marvin Hagler, and the one that really everyone always bring up is the Marvin Hagler and Tommy Hearns, the best 3 rounds in boxing for many years. So, you know, the careers of Tommy Hearns and Marvin Hagler and Leonard, those 3 fights, and Duran, you know, Roberto Duran. I did a lot of fights with these 4 guys, and these 4 guys really helped my career.
And it's funny that you say that because a lot of people would figure, how can the boxers define your career when you're the one that's a referee and you're the one that should define your own career? But in a way, boxers do define your career and get in these big fights. And like we talked about, it was up to the whatever athletic commission to get you these fights and for you to work these fights in the first place. But then again, it's also, you know, it was your decisions and your all the right things that you did in your career, which is what you did throughout your life.
Yeah, you know, I think about Mike Tyson's and, you know, the 4 fights that I did with him. And, you know, a lot of officials, they was kind of a little scared to referee his fight because they never knew just what he might do, you know. And when it came to selecting a referee for Mike Tyson's fight, I was always willing and able to go ahead and do it, you know. Mike Tyson fights was one that, you know, a lot of guys didn't know to stay back or to go in or whatever, because this guy could do something illegal at any time, you know. But I never thought about that. I just say, hey, I'm going to do my job. When the time comes, you know, I'm going to execute, you know. Just like him in the Razor Ruddock fight. You know, Razor Ruddock was in trouble, and he knew he was. He'd been down a couple of times. When Mike knocked him up against the ropes and his hands went down, I stepped in and stopped the fight because I was not going to let him get that last punch, because that last punch might have been the one that had done, you know, damage and might have really hurt this young man seriously. So I took it upon myself to say, hey, you know, I know the fans was waiting for that last punch. They wanted to see him land on the canvas flat, but you know, I thought they hadn't seen enough, and I stopped it when I did. I think about that today, and when I was called and said that I had made the International Boxing Hall of Fame, I think about all those fights, all the different, you know, writers and everybody said, oh, you know, this or that, if it was for me or against me. But this, you know, makes it all worthwhile.
Like the Belger Taylor, with only 2 seconds left, a lot of people got on you, like we talked in the first interview, that there was only 2 seconds. Why didn't you let it go? But those 2 seconds could have killed a man, and then it would have been on your shoulders to deal with it.
Yes, yeah, and you're certainly right about that. And you know, like I explain to a lot of young referees now, you know, time doesn't make a difference. The time, once a kid or a fighter is in a condition where he cannot protect himself, the fight is over. Time has no difference. Time should not be in a referee's mind, because if the time is in his mind, that means that he's favoring somebody.
And that also means that the focus is not on the fighters where it should be 100%.
That's right. That's right, yeah. Yeah, his focus should be on the condition of the fighter all the time, and not worrying about can he make it through this round, because that's when you're going to get somebody hurt.
Now, if you don't mind, if we could bring up some of the fights that we didn't talk about last time, and people were like, "Man, I love that section where you were just talking about fights with them." Let's throw on a few fights if you don't mind, Richard.
Yeah, go ahead.
How about Bobby Chacon and Cornelius Bosa Edwards? You know, a
Oh
lot of
my.
people love that fight, and fight number two. And when those two got it on, and Bobby, you know, ended up taking that fight by decision. But what do you remember about that fight?
Oh, I remember that fight so well because Boza was managed by Mickey Duff, and I had been in Europe doing a lot of fights over in Europe that Mickey Duff promoted, and Boza always felt, Boza Edwards. He didn't talk to me for about 10 years. You know, he wouldn't even speak to me. He was so mad that I stopped that fight. But it's just like I told him. I said, hey, I did my job, and that's the way that I saw the fight going. I did my job, but and then after about 10 years, Boza, he moved to Vegas, and him and I became good friends. So I really, that fight with Bobby, Bobby Chacon was a great young man, a great fighter, and it was a very exciting fight, and people really loved the fight and loved the outcome.
Less than a year later, I would say about 7 or 8 months later, you would again referee a fight with Bobby Chacon, but this time it was against Ray Boom Boom Mancini. And,
Yes.
it would be a totally different story. We started seeing that, sure, Bobby Chacon went up in weight and maybe shouldn't have been there, but he was way past his prime or way past the time he should have been there. What did you think of refereeing that fight where he got stopped in just 3 rounds against Boom Boom Mancini? What did you see on that fight? What did you think coming
Well,
into this fight?
doing my instructions were, to Bobby, when I went to his dressing room, I told Bobby, I said, Bobby, you cannot get on the corner or get in the corner and take punishment. If you get in the corner or get on the ropes and I see that you can't get out, I'm going to stop the fight. I'm not going to let you take a lot of punishment. A lot of people will always say, oh, Bobby could take it, Bobby could take it. Well, I love that kid, and I was not going to let him just take it just to prove a point. And when he got on the ropes, I told him to move off. I told him, punch or get out, and he didn't do it because he was hurt. I stopped the fight, and Bobby said to me, I can take it, I can take it. And I said, that's why I stopped it, because it comes a time in everybody's career where you can't take it. And I think this is your time.
See, Richard, this is why I do this, is because I saw this fight. I didn't know the background you just told me right now, but I remember watching this fight, and it all makes sense now, because when I saw your stoppage there, I saw in your face that it's something that you didn't want to do, or maybe it's just something you didn't want to believe, is that you had to stop somebody, but you were just trying to save him and
Yes.
for a beating, and that's pretty much your job as a referee.
Yeah, the safety of the fighter is the main job of a referee. The major job for a referee is to make sure that, if he desire to fight again at a later date, he's be able to. And, like I told Bobby, hey, you can't stand, because Mancini was a puncher. He was a puncher, so I couldn't let him just stay on the ropes and take those punches and wait for him to come back, because, that's how these young guys get hurt.
And they do need to see another day and another paycheck
That's
and
right.
to see their family again.
That's right. So Bobby had a chance to come back again.
And let me ask you a random fight. I hope you remember it. Julio Cesar Chavez against a great Puerto Rican fighter named Juan Laporte, who I had on just about a month ago or so. What do you remember about that fight? It was a technical decision. What do you remember the fight up until the point of the stoppage?
It was a lot of action. It was action, but Julio Cesar Chavez was a devastating puncher, and Laporte was a great boxer. You know, didn't have the punching power as Julio Cesar Chavez, but he knew how to box, he knew how to fight, and that's what made the fight interesting.
And of course, it was judges that made the decision that Julio should have won that fight. Would have that been your decision too, if it would have been up to you to give it to Julio?
Yes, Yes, I definitely would have.
About a year later, Julio Cesar Chavez would fight one tough guy, another Puerto Rican fighter named Edwin Rosario. And I could imagine, you remember that fight, a very tough phone booth type of fight where they were just phone booth style, just going at it. And it was Julio Cesar Chavez, one of his hardest fights, and he said Rosario was one of the hardest punchers. What do you remember about that fight with those two guys?
Well, as you said, they were both equal in the punching power, and they both was great boxers. They knew how to box because they had spent time learning, and they came up the right way, and they knew how to box. They knew all the tricks of the trade. Plus, they had the power. Both of them had the power, to knock each other out. And it was a great fight, and that's what fans, they love to see.
We talked about Sugar Ray Leonard and all the great fights he had in the 80s, but he happened to fight a guy named Donnie Lalonde, and that was a huge fight back at that time. We still watch it today on ESPN. They show it all the time. What do you remember about that fight with Donnie Lalonde and Sugar Ray Leonard, with Donnie Lalonde having to make a catchweight to fight Sugar Ray Leonard in a big fight like that? What do you remember about that one?
Well, Donnie Lalonde was a good boxer. Donnie, he was from Canada.
Correct, and he's one of the most underrated fighters, yes.
Yeah, he was underrated because he's from Canada. But, he knew how to box, and as a matter of fact, he dropped Leonard, and I think that was the biggest mistake of that fight that he made, because when he dropped Leonard got up, and man, did he ever go for the knockout. And I remember that fight so clearly because, he knocked him out of the ring, and I was trying to catch him before he fell all the way out. And I did catch Donnie Lalonde before he fell completely out of the ring, and the fight was over then because he was knocked out.
And I'm glad you brought that up, and how sometimes referees have to get actually physical while they're doing their duties in there. What do you remember was the most physical that you had to get in a fight because of your duty and, to help a fighter out? What do you remember was the most grueling physical, encounter you had in a fight?
Well, Mike Tyson, he was so hard to handle. He was so strong and everything. And always make the referee work overtime and stand in the right position and trying to push him off the guy when it was over with. So Mike Tyson, I think, has been my hardest fighters when it comes to, controlling a guy by your own strength. Mike Tyson was very capable of hurting somebody with just one last punch. So you have to be there, and you have to move this guy out of the punching range, so make him stop punching. So I would definitely say Mike Tyson would be that type of guy.
Yeah, just a few months after that Donnie Lalonde fight, you refereed Mike Tyson against Frank Bruno. That was a very brutal fight there from those two guys, and I believe Frank Bruno had hit Tyson with a nice shot in the first round, but of course Tyson came back to really take him out in the fifth round. What do you remember about that fight, Mike Tyson, Frank Bruno, the first one?
Well, Frank Bruno, as you said, he lands a hard right hand. He lands a hard right hand that really hurt Mike Tyson. And matter of fact, I'm looking at him. I said, why don't he jump on him? I was thinking that myself. But when he hit him and hurt him, I think he backed up. And when he backed up, that's when Mike charged in on him and unloaded, several combinations on him and got him hurt. Well, I had to stop and pull Mike off of him when I thought it was going to be the other way around.
As far as how hard it was to referee one of his fights, a lot of people in attendance say that there's no other boxer that can hit, and the sound alone of Mike Tyson's punches were a lot different than anybody else's, most likely because of how hard he hits. But did you get a lot of that? Did you actually hear or feel the actual power of Mike Tyson's punches when he did hit his opponents?
Yeah, both of them. I could hear it. and he was breaking bones. You could hear the power, you could see the power, you can see the effect of the punches, and that's why you had to stay close to this guy because, when it was over with, you had to pull this guy off of the guy because Mike Tyson would not, he was never going to stop punching until the referee making.
Another fighter that we know very much of you doing his fights was Julio Cesar Chavez, like we spoke of. When he fought Hector Camacho, you were there, and you could just imagine what the Mexican Puerto Rican crowd was like on that night, what it was like around you, the whole hype of the fight, and what went around that. What do you remember about that fight? Let's say even before the fight started happening, but just being in the ring there with those two guys and all the crowd and them being announced and right before the fight. What do you remember about this?
It was a very exciting fight. It was a buzz in the air. Everybody was waiting, to see if Camacho was going to be able to dance his way around and get his combination off and be able to stay away from Julio Cesar Chavez. But the thing was, Chavez would cut him off, and what really hurt Hector so much was the body shots, because the body shots he was getting hit with were just really hurting him and slowing him down. And that's what Chavez was trying to do, stop him from running. So he kept hitting to the body, slowed him down to where he could get on top of him and stop him.
Back then, we didn't have all the nice equipment that we do today, all the technology that we have today, where you could actually hear the boxers going through grunts and moans and all that when they get hit. Did you hear a lot of that during fights, like with the great Julio Cesar Chavez or Mike Tyson or all these fighters that we talked about? Did you hear a lot of craziness while you were in there in the ring? Since, of course, we don't hear it on TV like you guys probably can as being the third man in the ring. But is it a lot different to be in that ring with two combatants in a ring? Do you guys hear a lot more than what we see on TV?
Yes, and that's one of the ways and the reason why a lot of fights are stopped, and the fans, why did he stop it? Why did he stop it? Because the moans and the groans and the body shots and everything, we hear that. We hear when a guy's really hurt and his moans and him saying, oh, and all of this. We hear that right there. So we know how hurt he is, So when we stop a fight, it's ready and it's time to do so, But a lot of the spectators don't hear those moans and groans, and they don't realize how much damage these punches are doing.
Roy Jones and James Toney, what do you remember about that fight? Whenever you do a Roy Jones fight, is he that fast where, as it is on TV, he's a lightning bolt? He was considered the best fighter of the 90s. But did you see a lot of that speed? Being in front of him, watching the punches go, was it pretty hard to calculate how fast he was?
Oh, yes, it was, because, he can throw a combination on you, before you know it. He'll throw 4 or 5 punches. He don't, not just that 1, 2, but he can throw multiple combinations. And he was a great fighter in those years because, he was so fast. His speed and his movement was so good, and he worked so hard at it. That's what kept him on top for so long. And matter of fact, he's still thinking about fighting now.
And you've done so many more fights after this, that'll be the last one I'll ask you about. But, you've done so many other fights after that. You've done fights with Michael Carbajal, one of my favorites, with Oscar De La Hoya, and, all these great fighters. And just from having to go through all these fighters and all the fighters that we talked about in the past, and what do you think of boxing?
Like I say, to be inducted to the International Boxing Hall of Fame, I'm very happy for that, because when I was in boxing, it was much different than it is today, So the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s was the best years of boxing, And I know some of the old guys would say the 40s and the 50s and the 60s was the best time. But I think we have more smarter fighters in my time than we ever had in the duration of boxing. And like I said, the 80s and the 90s, they was great years, great fighters, and they have lost some of the glow and some of the, I don't know, technician. These guys were technicians. A lot of guys are fighting today, other than Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather is one of the greatest fighters of all time. But there's so many. You look at your heavyweight division. A lot of people don't even know who the champion is. Because they do not fight the way that they did in the early years. So, I'm just so happy that I was in boxing when it was at the top, when boxing really, meant something. And it's a shame that I think the 70s and the 80s and the 90s was the best years, but they didn't make the money that they're making today. Today is what? A kid making 15 million, 40 million. I mean, that's unheard of in those days.
It's funny you bring that up because so many people that I talk to are about my age, late 30s, 40s, 50s, and they say the last best time of boxing was in the 80s and 90s. And who was the best referee at that time? I would say it was Richard Steele, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with me, and that's probably why you're getting the honor that you will be getting next year in Canastota, New York. What do you think of the gift of getting to travel around to all these different states and countries and work at and getting to see the world pretty much, doing your job, doing your everyday job, and getting to see what a lot of people don't see every day? What did you think of having to travel? Was that a good thing? Was that a bad thing? Or, what did you think of it?
Yeah, that was one of the best education I ever had. Traveling, just, we just lost one of the greatest personalities, one of the greatest men of all time, Mr. Nelson Mandela, just passed, and I was in South Africa with him, and to meet a guy like that, and he knew so much about my career, and to talk to him, have a lunch or something in his presence, and to talk to him, to hear him, and I'm just looking at the funeral on TV today, and it's set in my heart, but at the same time, I'm so happy that I was in boxing. I'm so happy that I made it to the top because I was able to meet a great man like Nelson Mandela.
Like I said, a gift. I mean, a lot of people don't realize these things as a gift, and you have that gift of being able to do something that a billion people wouldn't, be able to experience, and you did through boxing.
Oh, yeah, yes. It's nothing like boxing. It's no other sport as exciting as boxing can be. And the respect that people have all over the world, from Sydney, Australia, to Tokyo, Japan, to London, anywhere you go, Africa, anywhere I go, people recognize me. And that's what boxing has done for me. Boxing is the greatest thing that I ever had.
After your referee career, you have become a boxing promoter, and then you opened up your own gym, I believe you told me, in Vegas.
Yes.
How was that going? What's going on with that? And give us a little rundown.
Well, I tell you, my gym is going real good. It's the Richard Steele Foundation. So we have a foundation that I started. It used to be Richard Steele Boxing Club. Now it's Richard Steele Foundation. And anyone could go to the website and keep up with me at richardsteelefoundation.org. So you can keep up with me and see what I'm doing. We're really trying to help the young kids, the young people, to stay in boxing, and maybe we can get one of the Olympics and maybe get a kid to the Olympics. And I think that more gyms need to be, open up where kids can really learn the art of boxing. Boxing is a great sport, you know. Plus, with the boxing, not only the boxing, we have tutoring programs, we have academics in our gym that we make sure that these kids are being taught, how to make good grades in school and how to be good stand-up citizens in their community, and anti-bullying classes. We have all kinds of different classes in the gym. So the gym is a lot different from the gym that I grew up in, where it was nothing but boxing, But we have to think more of education for these young kids because, every one of them, not going to be boxers or professional boxers, but, they can always go to school and make good grades and become good role models in their community.
And there could always be a plan B, not just a plan A, and there's always has to be a follow-up plan.
Yes, you're right.
Just from hearing what you just said about the kids of the future, opening up these doors for kids in the future, what does that mean to you personally, professionally? How does that motivate you on a daily basis?
Well, it means a lot to me because so many times I see young kids, young guys walk through the door, and I see myself. I see myself, and I said, boy, I was the same way, thought I knew everything until I got into boxing. Boxing showed me that I had a lot to learn, but I stayed in there and I made something out of it. And like I tell the young guys and the young girls that come to my gym, if you stay in boxing, if you really dedicate yourself, you become a better person, and you become more educated, because boxing, you got to go to school, you got to make good grades if you are a member of my gym. I get their report cards, I make sure that they're doing good because, you got to have plan B, like you said. But boxing teaches kids respect for themselves and for others.
Well, Richard, once again, man, when I heard of the great news that you were going to be inducted into the 2014 International Boxing Hall of Fame, it almost brought a tear to my eye, to be honest with you, because I remember our talk 2 years ago. I remember talking to Jeff Zimmerman right after that, and we were like, yeah, I hope he makes it one day. As a referee, as a boxer, as a person, as a human being yourself, as a humanitarian, you will receive what you deserve, which is that world title and being on the next class of the 2014, the International Boxing Hall of Fame, which you very much 100% deserve. And I will stand by that forever. And if they didn't induct you into that Hall of Fame someday, I would have said that I saw them a lot less. Mr. Richard Steele, thank you very much for coming on to theboxingbar.com once again. Thank you for everything you've done for boxing, that you are still doing for boxing, and that you will be doing for boxing in the future. You are the future yourself, no matter what anybody says, and you are a future Hall of Famer, and I hope to be there in Canastota to watch you get that award.
I hope you're there. It'd be wonderful to see you. And De La Hoya, Felix Trinidad, and myself, and several other great people that's in the world of boxing. We all will be going in at the same time, 2014.
And Joe Kazagi as well. And all you guys deserve it, and it will be probably one of the biggest Hall of Fames ever.
Yes. So I hope to see you.
God bless you, Richard. Thank you for everything once again, for everything you've done for boxing, and I hope to see that big smile on your face on that day.
Well, God bless you, man, and have a good night.